Hello, I'm Minister Duff, and this is Freedom Wings Ministries Corporation. And today we have the King James Bible, Genesis chapter 40. Genesis chapter 40. Let us begin. And it came to pass after these things that the butler of the king of Egypt and his baker had offended their lord, the king of Egypt. I'm going to read that again. And it came to pass after these things that the butler of the king of Egypt and his baker had offended their lord, the king of Egypt. So the butler offends his boss, pretty much. Well, the king of Egypt. All right, number 2. And the Pharaoh was wroth against 2 of his officers, against the chief of the butlers and against the chief of the bakers. And the Pharaoh was wroth. It's W-R-O-T-H, wroth. And the Pharaoh was wroth against 2 of his officers, against the chief of the butlers and against the chief of the bakers. Against the chief of the butlers and against the chief of the bakers, who offend the Pharaoh. And so the Pharaoh is saying, I'm not very happy here. I'm going to do something about this. And number 3, and he put them inward in the house of the captain of the guard, into the prison, the place where Joseph was bound. The place where Joseph was bound. So the prison that Joseph is in, as we just read in the previous section about Joseph and being put in the prison. So the butler and the baker, who work for the Pharaoh, are placed in prison, which is the same prison that Joseph is in. And number 4, and the captain of the guard charged Joseph with them, and he served them, and they continued to season inward. So the Pharaoh in charge of this particular prison puts Joseph in charge of the baker and the butlers. He charges Joseph with overseeing them, which is that's a big deal because Joseph is in the prison himself, and and so he's charged with overseeing these particular people who have upset the Pharaoh by going against him. Number 5, and they dreamed a dream, both of them, each man his dream in one night, each man according to the interpretation of his dream, the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt, which were bound in the prison. Number 6, and Joseph came into them in the morning and looked upon them, and behold, they were sad. And he asked Pharaoh's officers that were with him in the ward of his lord's house, saying, Wherefore look ye so sadly today? Wherefore look ye so sadly today? So the baker and the butlers have these dreams, and they're sad because these dreams upset them, and they're not sure what to make of these dreams. And so number 8 says, and they said unto him, We have dreamed a dream, and there is no interpreter of it. And Joseph said unto them, Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me them, I pray you. Tell me them, I pray you. Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me then, I pray you. So Joseph says, no, God gives us the dream, and God says what the dream means as we carry out our everyday lives within the aspects of how the dream may affect our lives. And are we seeing our future? Is it just a fantasy that we have, or we're going to do this with our life, or oh, I have this vision, and what's going to happen with this vision? I don't know. I don't know what it means. It makes no sense. So this is what the butler and the baker are saying. It makes no sense. I don't know. I'm sad because it makes no sense to me. I don't understand it. I don't know what's going on. It's a vision in a dream, but it's not a pleasant dream, so to speak, to them. And so let's see. Number 9. And the chief butler told his dream to Joseph, and said to him, in my dream, behold, a vine was before me, and the vine were 3 branches. In the vine were 3 branches, and it was as though it budded, and her blossoms shot forth. The clusters therefore brought forth ripe grapes. The clusters therefore brought forth ripe grapes. So yeah, there's this vine in the dream. It's got 3 branches, and it's producing good fruit. It's producing good fruit, but it's clustered up fruit. It's all mingled together within the vines. They're intertwined. So, number 11, and the Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. Gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. So, service. The butler and the baker are performing a service with serving grapes to the Pharaoh in this dream. The branches are all clustered up together, but it's producing good fruit, so they're intertwined. And so they take the branches and they crush the grapes and they present them to the Pharaoh. And Joseph said unto him, this is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches are 3 days. The 3 branches are 3 days. Yet within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up thine head, and restore thee unto thy place, and thou shalt deliver Pharaoh's cup unto his hand, after the former manner when thou wast his butler. So, the grapes will be given to the Pharaoh, as it is in the dream, and the Pharaoh will have the work of the butler. The Pharaoh will have the work of the butler. Everything's going to ease over according to this dream, and the butler is still in his dream serving the Pharaoh. And so in the light of the meaning of the dream, Joseph says, that's 3 days. In 3 days you will serve the Pharaoh the grapes from the branches. 14. But think on me when it shall be well with thee, and shew kindness, I pray thee, unto me, and make mention of me unto Pharaoh, and bring me out of his house. Bring me out of his house. Make me unto Pharaoh, and bring me out of his house. So Joseph is praying, and he's speaking unto the butler, and unto the butler and unto the baker. In his own dream, he says, Pharaoh, please return me back to my house. Return me back to thy house, the Pharaoh's. He says to the Pharaoh in his dream, Joseph is coming together within himself, and he's saying, please, Pharaoh, return me back to my house. For indeed I was stolen away out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also I have done nothing that they should put me into the dungeon. So Joseph is saying, I have done nothing. I've done nothing. Why am I going to the dungeon? Why am I going to the dungeon? And he's interpreting these dreams for the Pharaoh, and he says this is to the baker and to the butler. This is what those dreams mean. And in the meantime, he's saying, why must we all be in the dungeon? Why must we all be in the dungeon? It's kind of like coming together of all, between the butler, the baker, Joseph, and what the Pharaoh pleases to do with them. So you have Joseph, the baker, the butler, and the Pharaoh within this chapter. And like I said, the butler and the baker, they have these visions, and they say this is Joseph says, okay, so the branches are 3 days, and within the 3 days being up, you will serve the Pharaoh the grapes. That part of the vision is true. You're going to bring together the grapes and produce the fruit for the Pharaoh. And number 15, for indeed I was stolen away out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also I have done nothing that they should put me in the dungeon. That's the one that I just read prior, but we'll do 6. So we left off. That was 15, so we'll do 16. When the chief baker saw that the interpretation was good, he said unto Joseph, I also was in my dream, and behold, I had 3 white baskets on my head. 3 white baskets on my head. So let's see what Joseph has to say about this. He says he was in the dream too. Well, obviously he served the grapes to the Pharaoh after they mushed it down. Well, it was served to the Pharaoh. He probably didn't see himself serve it. They were mushed down and they were given to the Pharaoh. And so number 17, and in the uppermost basket there was of all manner of baskets for Pharaoh, and the birds did eat them out of the basket upon my head. And Joseph answered and said, this is the interpretation, therefore the 3 baskets are 3 days. The 3 baskets are 3 days. So we're back to 3 days. Number 19, and yet within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up thy head from off thee, and shall hang thee on a tree, and the birds shall eat the flesh from off thee. Alright, I'm going to read that again. Yet within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up thy head from off thee, and shall hang thee on a tree, and the birds shall eat thy flesh from off thee, from the flesh from off thee. So he has these baskets, they're on his head. Joseph says, no, the Pharaoh is going to dismantle your head and hang it on the branches for the birds to eat. Nice Pharaoh. Number 20, and it came to pass the 3rd day, which the Pharaoh's birthday, that he made a feast unto all his servants, and he lifted up the head of the chief butler and the chief baker among his servants, and he restored the chief butler unto his battleship again, and he gave the cup of the Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief butler as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet did not the chief remember Joseph, but forget him. The Pharaoh serves up the butler on a platter to the birds. But it also says that the Pharaoh had a feast for his servants. And within the end of the feast does the Pharaoh serve up the head. Within the end of the feast does the Pharaoh serve up the head. So, let's think about that. Now, bosses, family members, relatives, Joseph in the jail, the butler, the baker, they serve to be fed up to the birds in the end. Now, when I said family and relatives and things, the Pharaoh is the big boss. And the butler in the vision of this dreams, the butler, even though he is in the butler and the baker, even though they are in jail with Joseph, they're dreaming of still serving the Pharaoh. That's what the dream says, even though it's the 3 days, significance of the 3 days. But they're dreaming of still serving the Pharaoh, as that's their profession. They work for the Pharaoh, even though they went against, they displeased the Pharaoh, and the Pharaoh put them in prison with Joseph, and put Joseph above them. And so, just think, what is a boss to you, and how do you try and please and serve your boss? And is your boss God? Think about that for a minute. How do you serve and please your boss? And is your boss in life God? God. Think about that. Jesus and God. The threefold. Father, Son, Holy Ghost. The Son, the Father, and the Holy Ghost. They all come together. And they all have meaning within our lives, because we have no life without them. So who do you serve? Do you think of your boss, your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, relatives, people above you? If you're military, we'll look at military chain. If you have the officers above you, do you serve them per se, as only them, or do you serve only God as only God? Who do you serve? Do you serve society as society alone, or do you serve society within the service of God? Do you serve society within the service of God? Many blessings, my friends, many blessings.